The Game of the Year is Elden Ring. I hate watching and reading all these Game of the Year lists because there's only really two choices, Elden Ring and God of War, as these are the only two AAA games that feel like they're worth anywhere close to $70. On paper, they're very close to the same game. They're third-person RPGs with crazy stories and world building about the player killing gods, but they couldn't be more different in how they approach them. There is no real narrative in Elden Ring, but it's one of the most rewarding games I have ever played. Beating that game is a skill that I'm proud to have developed, even if it does ultimately lead to increased virgin vibes.
However, you are maidenless.
It's not a perfect game, the quests are absolute shit, and the game forces the player to grind levels at a certain point. But I can't say how much I love the combat, weapons, and look of this game. You want to talk escapism from a shitty alienated life? Well then look no further than the lands of in-between. Every detail, every vista has love poured into it, and it's sold to you without microtransactions and with a content amount that is easily worth this $70 price tag this game demands. I'm sure its DLC will be great. Everything FromSoft does is great. They're such talented developers they could fart in my eyes and the resulting infection would be a feature-complete 60-hour-long RPG. As for God of War Ragnarok, well, God of War is the best HBO series they've ever made, and it deserves to sweep the Emmys.
She was my wife.
It has better writing and dialogue than about 90% of the content out there. A villain with real motivation. Who knew such a thing could exist in a video game? Everything this game does is done to the highest level. Gameplay, narrative, menus, accessibility, all of it is top fucking notch. But more than that, it's a pleasure to be a God of War fan. Probably my favorite thing about God of War Ragnarok is how much amazing lore it has, not just within Norse mythology, but throughout the God of War franchise. Just about all of these major franchises have gotten reboots or spiritual sequels or sequels themselves that range from bad to amazing. But almost all of them either get rid of or make serious changes to the source material.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
God of War is pretty much the only series that has a sense of respect for every single one of its past games, and should shame every other reboot into treating its lore better. So if you were one of the losers, like myself, Jonathan Rosenblum, head game critic at Tibbs TV, who played those old God of War games on PSP thinking they wouldn't matter and were simple shitty spin-offs, we were wrong. The amount this game rewards longtime fans of the series just makes it something incredibly special to me.
You have a brother?
His name was Deimos. When we were boys, he was taken by two gods obsessed with prophecy. Gods of my homeland seldom left survivors.
To say nothing of the top tierness of every other aspect. But the one flaw with God of War Ragnarok, and why it doesn't get Game of the Year, is that it's just a better God of War 2018. And Elden Ring feels something like more than Dark Souls. It feels like something new. And for that alone, it's going to get the Game of the Year of 2022. But everyone already knows Elden Ring's the Game of the Year. Nothing can compete against these two AAA giants. And some great games came out this year. I mean, no other great AAA games did. Horizon Forbidden West was bleh. Xenoblade was Xenoblade. And Xbox basically just stopped making games. But outside of AAA, some amazing things are happening. Some of them even started development back in 1999. Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy has been a great game since it came out in the early 2000s, and it's still a great game today. And now in 2022, a group of absolute kings have been able to build a PC port of Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. This game is pretty much perfect, and it shines exceptionally bright now that it's made for modern PCs. You begin to notice the little things like the lack of loading screens that even new releases struggle to get right, or how colorful the characters are, not just in their dialogue and actions, but their designs. How about how insanely good this soundtrack is? Picture this in your head. You're hungover. All you want to do is shut yourself out from the world for around 6 hours before forcing yourself to go outside so you don't feel too despicable. You can either drop $70 on Elden Ring, which is going to make you throw your controller against the wall, or you can open up this game on your PC and smile every single time you get a little orb and they do their little cute dance. With these new graphics and these new controls, it makes beating this game in an afternoon an absolute joy. Also, shout out to this great team that is making this all possible by literally rebuilding house-made coding language used by Naughty Dog. I hear they're working on Jak 2 and 3 as well. These guys fuck, and those games fuck. But Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy, has a certain charm and color to its world that just feels great, like taking a bath after ingesting a bunch of Percocet. If Jak and Daxter is a great game, and God of War is the best HBO show I've ever seen, then Pentiment is the best book I've read since Disco Elysium. But you do have to love the vibe of it. It's a murder mystery that critiques art and truth itself. Pentiment is for you if you think sharing meals with peasants and saying penance in a chapel sounds like a good time.
Losers, in other words.
Well,
It's a point-and-click adventure game that takes place in medieval times somewhere in Germany or some like Bavaria or something, who knows. But as a history nerd, this game is for me. It takes a simple murder mystery and elevates it to the point of greatness through the care and passion in the writing. Every character is well fleshed out, with multiple references to history and religion and myth. And if you ever get lost in all of that myth, you can just click on the hard word, the book opens, and you'll see the answer. It's so delightful to play, and it just feels like it was written by people who love and understand history. But this is also one of those games where you never really get a concrete solution. Everything's kind of super open-ended, which is a bummer. I get wanting ambiguity, but at the end of the day, you'll go online and see that your choices had a major effect on the characters, but you'll never know which was the correct. But the big theme of this game is that some things can never be set right, nor can you avoid the past. It must be confronted. Which is a bummer because within the gameplay itself, the dialogue choices are meaningful and it's short enough that it makes you want to revisit it, but this time you know Italian instead of French. If you are looking for a good book to read and a village you can get lost in for hours, you should check out Pentiment. Factorio for the Nintendo Switch. It's hard to say what I love most about this game, whether it's the graphic choices that looks like it's mixed between an old school RTS game and Roller Coaster Tycoon, or maybe it's the gameplay that just grows and grows on you like an itch, leaving some inefficient part of the factory while you go off to do household or real life chores will eat at you. You'll rush back to your Switch only to build up the factory and find you didn't think ahead enough and you need to completely reroute everything. All of this and you're only on the second tier of technology. You'll have no idea that you've completely forgotten high school geometry because you now have learned how many copper wires it takes to make a grabber. It does get a little too confusing at the higher levels and can get kind of broken when doing things like routing automatic trains. But fuck, the majority of the gameplay is so simple and smooth. Learning the complex stuff is actually inviting compared to most games. But one of the things I love even more than the game itself is the dev of this game and how committed they are to supporting the Switch and their policy on sales. They are going to keep the patch parity with the PC version for all of Factorio's ports. And the game will never go on sale because the devs stand behind their belief that Factorio is worth $30, which it easily is. All of this is fantastic. All devs should do that. But the devs take it even further and allow you to transfer your saves from PC to Switch and Switch to PC. So if you beat your game on Switch and hit a wall and you want to install the mods that are only available on PC, you can buy the game on PC, install as many mods as you want, and get way more than 60 hours worth or $60 worth of content for your buck. And speaking of bang for your buck, Vampire Survivors is an insane value with another great dev. They could charge $20 for this game and it would still be the pick for Indie Darling of the Year. All you have to do is move. You don't attack, the game does that for you. You just move, collect items, and move some more. About 10 minutes into your first run, you will start to feel like a god, absolutely murdering herds of fuckers simply by turning in their direction. Which is great because at the start of the run, you'll be running for your life and using meta tactics like saving healing items and pairing certain items together. And that progression from incredibly weak to incredibly kick-ass feels like the only thing close to Risk of Rain 2 in terms of making the player feel overpowered and like a god. And then the game gives you fun little bonus levels and new mechanics and characters with basically every new run. There are so many items, there are so many effects, there are so many characters, so much content out there for what's $5 on PC, free on your phone, and also on Game Pass? If you put this game on your phone, you'll be a better person because you'll finally have something more addictive than social media. The last game on this year's list might literally be one of the greatest ever made. Based on the impact it's had on gaming, it's a better candidate for Game of the Year than Elden Ring. I'm talking, of course, about Dwarf Fortress. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert on Dwarf Fortress. I'm not. I'm a newbie. I have barely gotten this fortress working. I'm still learning, literally learning though. I'm learning something every time I play this game. But this is one of those games you don't have to be good at to appreciate. I've watched this thing go from an obscure game with letters for graphics that was basically a genocide simulator. Then it evolved into a game with graphics mods to help newbies, and tons of tutorial videos on YouTube to foster the community. And now it's evolved into a perfectly ported, much easier to understand masterpiece of fantasy, world building, and game design. It's insane how much this game has influenced gaming's landscape. From Minecraft to RimWorld, you can't escape Dwarf Fortress, and you shouldn't. You could build an entire game out of the cooking mechanics alone. It's hard, it's unforgiving, but it's fun to learn. And then you think about all of the work that it must have taken to turn this complex mess of a game into something that even a layperson like me can understand, and you have such an appreciation for where this game is and its effect on the industry in 2022. So if you're curious at all, please buy this game and try to take the time to learn it. And if you don't like it, then try looking at some of the lore videos on YouTube and the creative stories that people come up with. I genuinely believe that you will be a smarter, better, and more creative person if you let a little bit of Dwarf Fortress into your life. With the Game Standard here at Tibbs TV, I'm Jonathan Rosenblum.